I was a bit ambivalent about making a Stephen King episode, not because I don't like his work, and the thought of reading one of his longest books would be torture. It's actually the opposite. I f***ing love Stephen King.
Hail to the king, baby.
His books are being adapted all over the place, from movies, TV, to streaming services, so now it gives me an excuse to talk about it. The movie came out last month, bringing the book back to the bestseller list. People are picking it up for the first time, and it is probably the best, but also the worst introduction to King's work. Walking into your bookstore and seeing a physical copy, there's one thing that comes at you. Its size. It is around 440,000 words, with my copy being 1,090 pages. To put in perspective, the Bible is around 780,000 words. For such a big book, what is it about? A spooky clown kills a bunch of kids. That's kinda it. For his faults or merits, King writes a lot, taking a B storyline and making this overarching narrative where even his short stories can sometimes run the length of short novels. An alien abduction in the woods is now a character portrait into childhood friends and the degradation of that friendship growing up, with a large reference to Apocalypse Now thrown into the second half and also being a pseudo-sequel to it. A superflu causes the end of the world, midway through becomes an Americanized Lord of the Rings. Magic time-traveling cowboy on a road trip is a massive series spanning and connecting nearly all of King's stories. This is where we're at with it, where the horror centers on a monster in the sewers, but also intertwined are horrors of haunted houses, isolationism and being ostracized in small-town America, institutional racism and bigotry, serial killers, the growing emotional and physical strain of age, the enveloping nothingness, our lack of importance in the universe in a Lovecraftian style, with just a flair of Rick and Morty absurdity in the mix.
Oh, geez, Rick, can you help us out a bit?
Morty. You have to thrust your fist against the post here, Morty, and still insist that you see ghosts. That's all I can tell you, Morty. Once you get into cosmological shit like this, you have to throw out the instruction manual. And trauma, dealing with it as both an adult and a child. How it stays with you even if you repress it. It's a part of you and how its part plays in molding the adult you become. Even if you move past it, sometimes it creeps up on you. One day and you realize sometimes a trauma is so imprinting you don't just get over it, it lingers. It is my favorite type of horror and it's a major theme of it. Not that I have past trauma that I haven't dealt with in a healthy way. Why would you think that?
Hello?
Smitty, baby, I hope you're sitting down good, 'cause listen.
Get away!
Smitty, are you there, Smitty? You're gonna go far in this business, kid. Call me back.
That was weird. Normally in these videos I go over the plot of both book and movie while comparing and contrasting the differences, but there's an issue. The book's story is nonlinear, told intermittently between 7 main characters in a losers club. Their name, not mine. With them flashing back and forth between the summer of 1958 to 1985, with interludes going through the history of the town and its influence over the years. At the later part of the novel, the flashbacks are more frequent, as we get closer to see how the losers club, both young and old, fight Pennywise the Clown, and show that history is repeating itself. The new movie decided to separate the two timelines entirely, and update the setting to 1988 during the summer for the kids, and a sequel already set for next year for the adult part. The 1990 TV movie made a compromise in this, where the story is told back and forth between 1990 and 1960, but have most of part 1 showing the 1960 story with the kids fighting Pennywise in the end, while also using an adult scene that was in the beginning of the novel as a cliffhanger to go into part 2. The TV movie also didn't know exactly when they wanted their story to take place.
I wish this summer would never end. It's the best summer of my whole life.
Alright, you guys, quit that running. This is a hallway, not a track. Come on.
With the TV movie originally planned to be 10 hours long, ABC cut it down to 3. While both versions adapt all 7 of the losers, a lot of backstory had been left out for time in both adaptations. Some for good reason. King can get lost in his own words at times. Richie had felt a mad, exhilarating kind of energy growing in the room. He had done cocaine 9 or 10 times over the last couple years, at parties mostly. Coke wasn't something you just wanted lying around your house if you were a big-time disc jockey.
And the feel was something like that. But not exactly. This feeling was pure, more of a mainline high. He thought he recognized that feeling from his childhood when he had felt it every day and come to take it merely as a matter of course. But now that energy is back, no, not all the way back, not yet anyway, but coming back, and it's not just him, he can feel it filling the room.
Are you going to talk to us or not, Richie? Richie, in all 3 versions, is the loudmouth joker of the group, who doesn't know when to stop, which gets him into trouble. As an adult in the book, Richie is a famous radio DJ in LA. The TV movie has him as a famous night show host. Bill is the loser's selected leader. In the book and the TV movie, Bill is broken over his brother's death, but tries to have a normal life with his friends. The new movie takes a different route, having Bill obsessing over his brother's disappearance, studying the sewer system, bringing his friends along hoping to find his brother's body. As an adult, Bill grows up to be Stephen King, basically. I mean, they aren't exactly the same. Sure, they're both successful writers publishing horror novels and screenplays, but Bill is married to Audra, an attractive actress, and King is married to Tabitha, an attractive author. Totally different. Stan is the logical one of the group, the one who is attempting his best to either rationalize or outright deny all the strange things happening in Derry. Book and TV Stan stay roughly the same. Stan's Judaism is in the background, with their family being very secular, with Book Stan talking to his friends that he doesn't really understand what it means to be Jewish and only identifying it by name, similar to Richie explaining he doesn't understand what it's like to be Catholic, despite being one. The new movie goes the opposite route, having Stan being the son of a rabbi studying for his bar mitzvah. Eddie is the skittish one, with an overbearing mother turning him into a nervous hypochondriac, which is accurate in all 3 versions. In his introduction chapter, there's a line that says Eddie doesn't need a shrink to know that he married his mother, in a Freudian married someone like her kind of sense. The TV movie decided to make that statement more literal, with adult Eddie still a nervous wreck, living with his mom in his 40s, leaving out some very important scenes of Eddie sticking up for himself. Beverly is the girl of the group.
I'll be with you in a minute, elephant in the room.
It acts like I ignore him or something. What I mean is that her character transformation and her interactions with the other characters throughout the story is based around Beverly growing up to be a woman. She notices her body's changing and the boys start to look at her differently than the year before. The novel also shows the complex feelings an abused child has with their parent. A love that is confused and muddy because that same person that occasionally shows affection is also hurting her. That same nuance is also put into Eddie's relationship with his overbearing mother. The book at times explains in Al Marsh being kind to his daughter in some scenes. Both adaptations didn't have the time to convey that relationship, relying on a less subtle approach, like a hammer over our heads, which I will explain with the SpongeBob clip.
Not much fun being me now, huh, Patrick? Are you kidding? I used to do this way before I started copying you.
Ben is the clever one, reading constantly, and helped the rest of the group in constructing both a clubhouse, a dam, and even smelting. He's also a little hot-headed, acting a bit like Lieutenant Commander Worf at times, charging in ahead of the group that gets thrown into a wall. As an adult, Ben becomes a famous architect. The TV movie adapts him pretty accurately with one strange addition, making him the new kid at school. It's only ever brought up twice in the movie. What's even stranger is the remake opted to also make him the new kid on the block. It's the only thing that carried over not in the novel between the 2 movies. The new movie also decided to make Ben kinda pathetic. He's accident-prone, more socially awkward and quiet than he ever was in the book. A positive quality added to his character in the remake was taken from the last of the Losers Club. Mike is the outsider of the group. Them being the Losers Club, they are all outsiders, but Mike especially. He goes to a Christian school instead of public like the rest. He lives on the outskirts of town on a farm, and, well, it being 1958, and Mike's family is the only black family in town, Stephen King uses racism as a narrative in his stories quite a lot, actually. In It, it's very prominent. Despite an R rating, the new movie steers away from the racism angle, referring to the KKK as a cult instead of by name in one scene. With the older movie being made for TV in the 90s, you can expect the same treatment.
What? You're here. You know how to pick 'em. It's the Losers Club. yeah, the Losers Club.
Wow. In the book, Mike's father is also an unofficial historian, giving Mike this impression of curiosity that stays with him into adulthood, making him feel compelled to tell a much darker history in Derry, all revolving around a certain clown that I will focus on next episode. This is CB Smith, and thanks for taking a page. I guess it's time to mention the title character.
I'm Pennywise the Dancing Clown.
Despite being the main attention getter in both movies and some title covers of the book, the monster in It doesn't appear as a clown as often as you would think, giving all this promotion on him. Originally conceived by the author as a troll in the sewers, It is a being that takes many forms in the story, including the Universal movie monsters, with only the mummy and the werewolf showing up in both adaptations, but the new movie took the zombies from the book, and a homeless man with leprosy, and added more scenes with them. It has also appeared as a giant bird, flying leeches, and a living plastic statue of Paul Bunyan. No, really. But its favorite form to take is Pennywise the Dancing Clown, played very differently in both versions. There's a reason why Tim Curry's depiction is still remembered fondly when the rest of the original movie isn't. Fear is subjective, with Tim Curry's performance as that of a playful clown. He smiles, he jokes, he's playful, he's a lot of fun. That was how It was in the novel. This clown was more of a decoy to lure kids into a false sense of security than to outright scare you. This Pennywise would be fitting in a kid's birthday party, but what adds a disturbance is that this playful, jolly clown is shown in a sewer grate and in the middle of the woods, places that you shouldn't see a clown. I was weary seeing the promotional pictures for Bill Skarsgård as the new Pennywise, since the way he's framed is, well, just a creepy clown. His head's down looking at you, which is always creepy. I know, I've done it on accident. And his stance is very stiff, and there's always a part of him in shadows. But I was wrong. I was laughing when I saw him, but I don't think it was for the reasons the movie intended.
Hiya, Georgie.
Though there was some real, genuine tension, a lot of the scenes with this new Pennywise is over the top, which makes it fun, with one scene in particular that would make any gore fan singing Raining Blood.
It's raining blood. Hallelujah, it's raining blood. Oh yeah. I'm gonna let the gore out. I'm gonna get myself absolutely soaking wet.
That was weird. There are other monsters in It besides the clown, and no matter how an adaptation can go, you have about 4 antagonists for a 3-hour TV movie or split into 2 movies. There's going to be a lot on the cutting room floor. I'll be blunt, Henry Bowers is f***ing terrifying. In the novel, Henry is introduced as a simple school bully who slowly goes further and further into full-blown murder territory. There's a parallel to his and Mike's life in the novel, where Mike was raised in a loving home. Henry was raised by a hateful, abusive father who took it out on his son, instilling in him a feeling of hatred and indifference to everyone, especially Mike's family. It didn't help that they were neighbors. The scariest thing about Book Henry is that you read along about this kid growing more and more damaged. His transformation is very well done, and for that, in some ways, Henry Bowers is scarier than It. Both adaptations wouldn't have been able to find the time to cram all of Henry's character while also adapting the rest of the book. The new movie decided to go all into Henry's violent insanity that was saved later in the story, turning him into this cartoonishly violent lunatic, and I sit there in the theater wondering, how the hell does this maniac have more friends than me? I mean, that's what I assume some people would think. There was some attempt in the new movie to give him a backstory involving his abusive dad, though it's short-lived. It's the opposite for the TV movie, where Henry and the gang felt more like they were just ended rehearsal for West Side Story than being any kind of real threat. Patrick Hockstetter, for the purpose of the story, is nothing except to show how far Henry has gone insane now that he starts hanging out with this kid. In the book, he's the creepy kitten that would stare blankly at the wall, collect dead flies, torture animals. King spends an entire chapter going through Patrick's life. He's a psychopath. We stop the story just to learn who he is. And it is a ride, where some of the most not violent but disturbing imagery to come out of King's skull, mostly because of its details, are in that chapter. If an adaptation still had a book character's backstories, just never shows them. Like watching an episode of Game of Thrones and that one guy who may or may not be me needs to pause the show to explain this character's entire life.
Who's that?
Oh, this poor woman. This no-name background in the TV movie. He doesn't have skeletons in his closet, he has entire graveyards in some rusty refrigerator in the middle of the woods, and it's terrifying. The clown, this kid, I see you. Yeah, creepy. This new movie's Patrick is very different than his book counterpart. He's been changed to a regular in Henry's gang, and now he's a pyromaniac. In the book, Beverly grows up to marry an abuser like her father, bringing the same Freudian, marry someone like your parent aspect like Eddie in the novel. Tom and Beverly's relationship in the book is every snarky comment about 50 Shades of Grey's relationship. He's controlling. He hits her, takes over every aspect of her life. He stalks her, he follows her across states, etc., etc. Where 50 Shades romanticizes those aspects, Tom is a threat. If they met as kids, he'd be chumming with Henry and the gang. Like Patrick, Tom has some memorable, this time violent, scenes in the book that were cut in the TV movie, leaving him a bit of a neutered version of himself.
Bev, you need me! Bev!
We'll have to find out how Tom is in the sequel to the new movie, if he does appear at all. Being a fan of the book, despite the length and King's long-winded tangents, I enjoyed the hell out of it out of the 3 versions. But while the TV movie was more faithful to the book compared to the new movie, I enjoyed the hell out of the new movie more. The makers took the concept from the story, a creepy clown killing kids in a town by what they're most afraid of, added enough scenes from the original story for my bookwormy self to enjoy, but went off on their own thing, and I loved it. Tim Curry is still the better Pennywise. Well, I never did a 2-parter before, and with my move and the repairs I need to do on the house, it's been a long couple months. I think I covered everything needed in it. Alright. I'll talk about the elephant in the room. A scene that was in the novel that has been written about and mentioned tons of times since the new movie came out, despite not being in either adaptations. I don't do spoilers when I make these videos, but it's my show. I can break my own rules. For part 3, this is CB Smith, and thanks for taking a page. The point of taking a page, other than keeping my depression at bay, is to take a look into books, their adaptations, and any talking points pertaining to them that come out of my idiot skull. Like a sad one-man book club. But I wanted to keep a rule not to spoil or reveal endings.
He walked out of the hospital with his brother Michael, a pair of crutches, and the limp he'd have for the rest of his life.
That was different, that was Shark Month, and that movie ticked me off. It has been around for over 30 years now. With the new movie out, there's been talk of that scene. It's been in editorials, book reviews, articles. That scene is not in the new movie, but in the book, and has been the talking point when bringing up it. And I guess I'll be joining that talk for that scene. Breaking this video into 3 sections. What is the scene? Does it fit in the context of the story? And could it have been done better? So, in 1958, the Losers Club defeat it. Leaving its lair, the group gets lost, scared. They're falling apart. At this point, Beverly takes off her clothes and tells the 6 boys to have sex with her, one after another. Afterwards, the group was able to find their way out of the sewers, where they make a promise to come back to Derry to finish off it if it comes back. Okay then. To prepare for this video, I've read that scene a couple times to make absolutely sure I know what I'm talking about, and oh my god.
No!
I've read quite a bit of King's books, and I've noticed that sex in his books, while sometimes the most cringeworthy in the whole thing, they're supposed to offer some point to the story. A reveal of the cruelty of prison institutions, growing up from sexual trauma till it becomes the figurative and literal handcuffs of that person's life, or to open up a portal to an alternate universe New York City. King has talked about the sewer scene a couple years ago. I wasn't really thinking of the sexual aspect of it. The book dealt with childhood and adulthood, 1958 and grown-ups. The grown-ups don't remember their childhood. None of us remember what we did as children. We think we do, but we don't remember it as it really happened. The sexual act connected childhood and adulthood. Times have changed since I wrote that scene, and there is now more sensitivity to those issues. Let's break that down. But first, is the scene sexual like King said? It's kids having sex in the sewer, so yes, there's a sexual aspect to it. Compared to other sex scenes in the novel, most of the scene feels mechanical at some parts. We don't have detailed descriptions of all the boys taking their turn on her. And the scene will keep jumping to descriptions of birds, flying kites, reading comic books. But when it comes to Ben and Bill, the scene is very much more sexual from the point of view of the characters, and I need to take another shower.
No! No!
So the part of not remembering your childhood as you do, I agree with. Not just for my own personal childhood memories, but for King, who has effectively blocked out most of his memory seeing his friend killed by a train in front of him. There are some comments I found of people talking about how reading it as a kid, the scene wasn't much of a bother to them, until they got older with an adult point of view. They would talk about how, like the characters in the story, sex at 12 or 13 is mysterious, off-putting. Beverly thinks about this in the scene. Have you done it? What is it like? As for the times they are changing, what little reviews I could find of the time when the book was published, there isn't mention of this scene. I found people commenting in forums about reading the book 2-3 decades ago, and they very much felt off by the scene. What I think happened is with reviews, especially professional reviews, the focus is the work as a whole, but with the introduction of social media and the video essay vlog format, everyone has a voice. And at times, a certain scene will ruin an entire work for some people. Cormac McCarthy's The Road is the story of a father watching over his son, teaching him right in a world that isn't right. But I've read a couple books with characters mentioning the road, and all of them talk about is a small scene involving a baby. For many people, 1,000+ pages can be ruined by just 6. Which brings me to the next section. Does it fit in the context of the story? When I first read the book, I did not think so. But after reading the book a second time for this video,
Yeah, it kinda does.
it has many subplots and small stories within the book. Almost all of them, there is a constant progression of small instances growing into extreme conclusions. The school bully grows to be a killer. A racist city council wanted segregation turned into a mass murder and a cover-up. A standoff between some gangsters turns very rapidly into a massacre. A union dispute turns into an axe murder in a bar. In regards to the Losers Club showing their love for Beverly, to keep the group intact, there is a small scene in the middle of the book. The group decides to fill their clubhouse with smoke to gain visions about it. Ben reads it in one of his books. Bill wants Beverly to stay watch. Beverly keeps questioning him why, and it comes out to the fact that she's a girl. The other losers don't defend Beverly or Bill, they just stand around. Beverly threatens to leave, and the group is falling apart. Beverly has the idea.
Oh my god.
No, not that idea. She burns a match and closes the burnt end in her hand with 6 non-burnt matches. The goal being that whoever picks up the burnt match stays watch. Before everyone picks up a match, they say, "I love you, Beverly." It is filled with parallel storylines, and this scene is the best that explains the sewer scene, which brings us to the last part. Could the scene have been done better? Oh my god, of course. Have them hug in the sewers. Have Eddie or Stan break down and everyone go over and express their love for them.
No! Nobody's doing that!
The fact that the author has to step in and explain the scene, that I had to reread the book to get any kind of subtle hint that really could have just been a fluke on my part as a fan trying to defend a weird, awkward scene. Yes, it could have been done way better. Yes, it shouldn't have been made in the first place. Yes, an editor should have went to King and go, no. But it's Stephen King. When he's good, he's good. He is weird. He is off-putting. Anything crazy he thinks of can be put to paper and still be entertaining.
Okay, for my 307th book, this couple is attacked by a lamp monster.
And that sewer scene makes this the worst introduction to King's work, because if that scene wasn't in there, we'd probably be all talking about that, I'll just call it an interrogation scene in the Dark Tower. This is C.B. Smith, and thanks for taking a page.
So, I got punched in the face, right? And I walked in the sewers. And I went into a fucking crack house. And now I gotta kill this fucking elephant. Oh god, why would I think a wiffle ball bat would work?
Hi everyone, CB Smith here with a shorter, much less polished version of what I normally do here on Taking a Page. So, It Chapter 2 came out after 2 years ago, making this my fourth It video comparing both the original 1990 version and of course the book. The other parts I made can be found in the description below. So, this movie did what I didn't think possible. It made the other adult parts of the book actually good. That's coming from a fan of King. I loved his work for years. I have a little King tattoo on the back of my ankle. But that being said, I've read this book multiple times, which, if you saw the size, you would know that's an achievement. But yeah, it's more faithful this time around than the first remake 2 years ago, and also more faithful than the second part of the original movie. Interestingly enough, it starts out not halfway through the book, like you would think, this being a sequel, but instead the beginning of the book, with the really, really violent death of a gay man and a hate crime. And yeah, I've heard people talk about this leaving a bad taste in their mouth, and I can really see why. It is a story about trauma and the dark underbelly of small-town America, but was always made a little easier to digest because King adds silly monsters and supernatural elements and all these layers and layers of filler in this story. The first movie 2 years ago had balloons floating around to show us, the audience, that what we're seeing is some Pennywise influence, even though we know that there's a real horror that's going on. Pennywise may have influenced people to act out, but those actions were deep down in those people. The clown just brings it up to the surface. This scene in the beginning doesn't have anything like that. While the other scenes that deal with inner horror has that supernatural veil over it, we start off seeing a pretty realistic looking hate crime happening, and it's pretty disturbing. I think the movie was trying to make up for that with making one of the members of the Losers Club secretly gay. That wasn't in the books, which kind of works. It doesn't really change the person's character all that much, but it does make Pennywise's taunt to that person change from what was originally their fear to this new one that wasn't mentioned in the first movie. I think one of the things new book readers of this story would be disappointed by is that Pennywise doesn't actually appear very often in the book. It appears all the time, but as other things. As a clown, though, no. And nowhere near as often as before. That being said, I still think Tim Curry is the better Pennywise. Not that Skarsgård is bad, it's just the guy is so clearly made to be scary with how he acts, how he moves, and everything like that, while Tim Curry plays a playful clown. But he's acting that way in a sewer grate, or in the middle of the woods. It's off-putting. That's why it's scary. I think the people behind this movie heard that complaint, though, because we have a scene where a little girl literally tells Pennywise that she's walking away because, yeah, he's in the shadows, being creepy. No one would want to go with you, Pennywise. That doesn't mean the movie wasn't scary. There were some really good moments, using a lot of shadows and sounds of things running up at you that you can't see. There was one pop-up scare, I mean, ugh. There were some pop-up scares, sure, and not all of them stuck the landing. But there was one scene in the book in particular involving the witch from Hansel and Gretel, and it doesn't work at all in the book. This movie actually did make it work. I looked at my arm and was surprised to see goosebumps. Good job, movie. I think the people making this were given an opportunity to get creative with the visuals, and they did a really good job. The adults are dealing with childhood trauma that they suppressed, and nearly every scare deals in some part with that. The adult part of the book feels off because the adults are still scared of movie monsters like witches and zombies or vampires, and it doesn't really work because those fears don't reflect the characters we were introduced to. Beverly is a sexual abuse victim. Bill has survivor's guilt. Ben has issues believing in his own adequacies. Eddie is an hypochondriac. All those things are put in here, with some more successful than others. I mean, in that sense, I think the movie did a better job than the book did. And, well, there's this ongoing meta joke in the movie about Bill not able to write a good ending in his books, and it's clear from the first time mentioned that it's a poke at the ending of it and some of King's other stories. There's no way we were going to get the ending in the book, but I think they got the closest you can get with this, even though I was disappointed where the ending of it, the book, I was a little disappointed with the movie ending, where the ending of it, the book, was bittersweet. This movie went with a much more happier ending, like the original movie did, but went even further than that by turning one death in the story that was meant to shock you and set a dread to Pennywise's threat. It was now turned into an act of heroism, and it doesn't work. And in the end, despite the flaws, this was as good as an adaptation to it as anyone is going to get. It had some imaginative visuals, it fleshed out the ideas that were in the book really well, and there were a couple shout-outs to John Carpenter's The Thing, which was a little distracting, but does go with the fact that the book gave a whole bunch of shout-outs to movie monsters like Dracula and the shark from Jaws, and I say check it out. Be wary of some pretty disturbing things, and happy horror days, everyone.